Well, the City of Melbourne declared a climate emergency back in 2019. The council's website still tells Melburnians, where possible, take public transport, a bike or walk instead of using a car. It's noble stuff. There is a climate emergency after all, unless you're the council CEO. Late last year, Alison Leeton, Melbourne's chief executive, spent $5,500 of ratepayer money to fly to Cairo. That's right, you need to walk to work, but the council CEO couldn't let the climate emergency get in the way of attending World Cities Day and the World Urban Forum. I mean, sessions included, and I quote, slum activism, gender-responsive urban mobility planning, whatever that is, and information on how a shelter for transgendered people was helping to fight homelessness in India. Joining me now is Nationals MP Barnaby Joyce. Barnaby, this is what climate emergency leadership looks like. Finger wagging from 30,000 feet in a fully reclined seat.
It's the typical way of a cult, isn't it, James? That you see, what the leader does. He preaches austerity, he preaches virtue, he preaches, chastity, and then you find in the background he lives debauchery, he lives fragrantly, and he drives a Rolls Royce. This is always happens around these cults, but the Australian people are sick of being in this cult. They're sick of following this cult. We see it also, obviously not questioning his morality or anything, but Bowen, he lives in this alternate cultish universe. It's bizarre. He's out there today telling us power prices have all come down. It's all better. And what we see at these COP conferences, we're desperately trying to get ourselves a COP conference. They turn up in their corporate jets. We have Mr. Mike Cannon-Brookes, talking about the virtues of the climate whilst he owns a Formula One driving team and has a corporate jet. It's insane. Who are the suckers? Well, we are. We're the suckers, but we're sick of being the suckers. We're getting out of this rubbish. We've got to repeal net zero and just get our nation back to a sense of sanity and out of this mad cult.
Well, while we're on the topic of climate hypocrisy, I have to ask you about this United Nations climate chief, Simon Steele, who's been in Australia meeting with Chris Bowen and preaching to us about the need to harden up our net zero targets. He's the guy who said fruit would be a once-a-year treat and there'd be mega droughts and the impact on our GDP would be $7 trillion if we don't set higher emission reduction targets. But Barnaby, it turns out he is from a small island of Grenada in the Caribbean, exactly. And while he was in government, he actually supported tax breaks for the oil and gas industry, presumably to bring a bit of, wealth to his country.
Oh, but he's had enlightenment, hasn't he? He's had the transition. He's joined the cult, but he's joined the cult as a cult leader, and cult leaders make lots of money, and he gets to fly around the world and be proselytised to us dear apostates, and the hypocrisy of this, it just reeks it. You see him there, and as soon as you see him the first time, you go, I don't know, it's like a dodgy beast in the yards. You're going, don't quite know about this, and then you dig down, and sure enough, another hypocrite. And and when people take them seriously, that's what I can't work out. They get their dials on television and preach to us like most cult leaders do, and we're over this, once more they tell you about the jobs that are never there. They tell you how power's cheap and it's dear. They wreck the environment. They tell you it's cheap, yet they've got to have a capacity investment scheme where you, the listener, has to subsidise and underwrite their right to make billions of dollars out of your wallet. The whole thing, and that's what cults do. Ultimately, they're always ripping money off people, aren't they? They strip the money off people, and they just treat you like fools. What happened? Just like most people, from Grenada, you should stick to the cricket. They need help in the cricket, the West Indies these days, and just stay away from preaching to us, please.
Well, speaking of wealth being stripped from people, Victorians are set to be slugged with higher energy bills to pay for a renewables project, get this, Barnaby, that suffered massive cost blowouts. Who would have guessed? A new report from AEMO has revealed something called a VNI West project. It's a transmission line plugging into the Victorian grid, which is already pretty controversial. It's jumped from $3.9 billion, that was the original cost, to $7.6 billion. Barnaby, what do you know about this? And do any of these renewable projects not blow out in terms of costs?
Oh, no, James, that can't be right because we were told that renewables are the cheapest. No, you've got that wrong. We've got that totally wrong. No, of course you're right. And we've seen the farmers down there protesting against the transmission lines, that are basically socialising their private assets. We all sit back and watch the socialist state of Victoria. We've seen their new dictums coming out of the things they wish to achieve in their sort of new sort of socialist paradigm. And one of them is the complete deindustrialising of Victoria, the division of communities, the pushing of pensioners into poverty. That's generally what happens under Stalin and Mao. This great leap, the great cult leap forward in the power. But I would say to the people protesting on the transmission lines, I'm 100% with you, but don't say that. You've got to understand, if you believe in net zero, you believe in the transmission lines. You can't have it both ways. To take the head off this serpent, we've got to take out net zero. That's the banner we bind together under, because if you keep on saying, well, I believe in net zero, but I don't want the transmission lines, then you've got to say, well, mate, if you believe in net zero, we've got to have the transmission lines. So get rid of net zero, and we have a clean, clear argument that I believe is getting real momentum right now with the Australian people to get rid of this.
Okay, so that's the next thing I wanted to ask you about, Barnaby. There's momentum maybe with the Australian people in terms of getting rid of net zero, but you've been leading the charge in your own party and indeed in the coalition. What sort of response have you had privately from coalition MPs and senators to your push for the party to dump net zero completely?
Well, I'm not going to sort of talk for other people. I think people need the dignity of having their own say. But I am actually looking forward to cross the floor for the first time in a long while today, but I had to, because I was crossing the floor actually on having the right to debate my own bill, private member's bill. So I would have been looked a bit foolish not voting for that. Now, this will give the opportunity to a lot of people who I know want the opportunity, who actually are asking me for the opportunity to speak against net zero. I know there is a wave of support because it encapsulates what people on the conservative side of politics believe in. We do not believe in the primacy of the state. We want government out of our lives. And there's never a policy that has put the government more in your life than net zero. Basically telling you, the electricity you have to buy, the industries that we'll have on a ridiculous edict that Australia can cool the oceans and stop the frost and stop the cyclones, and it'll all be done by the grand cult leader, Mr. Bowen. This is barking mad, and a lot of people are now calling it as barking mad, and the movement against net zero is growing, but it's going to need the people from the cities and the suburbs to say, we are sick of these power prices, we are sick of this socialisation of our nation, and we are going to stand up with others to drag the politicians kicking and screaming to common sense, because I don't think it's going to be led from this building. I do think it's going to be led from the street.
So are you saying you don't believe that your leader or Susan Lee will adopt an abandonment of net zero position?
I'm not going to speak for them, nor am I going to cajole or bully. That's nothing like this. This is my barrier to push, and Cole Boyce's barrier to push, and Michael McCormick's barrier to push, and Garth Hamilton's barrier to push, and Lou O'Brien's barrier to push, and many, many others. But I'm not going to start sort of saying, you will do this or you will do that. I will appeal to your common sense.
It's just, sorry, Barnaby, when you say that you don't believe it's going to be led from this House, i.e. Parliament, it makes me wonder whether you're not confident that the coalition will adopt your position.
I'm not, right at this point in time, the position of the coalition is in support of net zero. I'm hoping that will change. So it would be ridiculous for me to say, I think it's going to have an overwhelming wave of support against net zero, because the actual position of the coalition right now is in support of net zero. I wish that would change. What I can say is, when you get off the plane in Tamworth, or when you walk down the streets in Sydney or basically anywhere I go now, people almost fall over themselves to tell you that they support the movement that I'm just a part of. I'm not the leader. I'm part of to get rid of net zero. To be quite frank, I'm overwhelmed by people coming up to me on the street against net zero. I haven't met one yet who's come up to me and said he or she disagrees and supports net zero. Not one.
Right, lastly, Barnaby, I want to ask you about your reaction to news that construction firms are collapsing at a record rate in our country. 1,500 firms have collapsed in the last financial year, which to me would cast some doubt over the government's promise to build thousands of new homes.
How can you build thousands of new homes when you want to keep the raft of regulations that makes homes so dear? Do you know in my area, in Danglemar, I think a lot of people have probably seen it on television, there's something called basic regulations. That if I do an extension to my house, I've got to take into account that I'm living in an alpine area. Now, I've had a look out the door and I can't see the reindeers, and I've never really been concerned about avalanches coming off the hills, and the igloos just don't work in Danglemar. But I'm apparently in an alpine area and have to get all the alpine parts of my construction into my extension, which of course puts the price up. Now, we're also on that. Are we opening up the state forest so we can get the timber out? Are we reducing the price of power so we can make the componentry cheaper? We're not doing any of this. And we magically think the price of houses are going to go down. I've had one place the other day, as I mentioned on this show, carbon offsets for a 10-acre paddock to build units on $3.5 million. How on earth is that helping the housing crisis? But this is what we've got. But
it's not going to.
It's like the rhetoric in this place. If you say it, it'll happen. If you say the climate will change, it'll happen. If you say houses will get cheaper, it'll happen. No, they don't. You've actually got to have common sense and understand if you want more houses, you need less regulations, you need cheaper products, and you need greater access to the things that actually make houses.
Absolutely, you do. Barnaby Joyce, always good to chat. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Absolute pleasure.